QuickBooks does a really good job of allowing us to enter and view information in a variety of ways, hopefully, at least one of which suits our personal or professional preferences. One of the things it offers that I find many people are unaware of is the ability to display and use account numbers. Now, for those who think like the average non business person, we're thinking, why on earth would anyone want to have to use account numbers when we can simply look at the transactions and see that it was for utilities or professional development, for example? For others, though, account numbers are quicker and are more specific in meeting their needs. They are just two different ways of thinking about the same thing, and QuickBooks likes to be accommodating to our needs. Account numbers are not required. The question is, if we want to use them, how do we display them? The answer lies in our preferences settings. Preferences can be accessed from the Edit menu on the top left of the screen, and they are all the way at the very bottom. We'll give that a click or a tap to open the Preferences window. We talk about preferences in their own chapter, but for now, we simply want to make sure that we view the Accounting category on the left and then the Company Preferences tab from about the middle of the screen at the top. The very first option we see is the one to use account numbers. We'll place a check mark here and then click OK on the top right to set that as our preference. You can instantly see that our chart of account has changed, and now we not only see the name, checking, savings, petty cash, but we also see the account numbers associated with them: 10,100, 10,300, 10,400. If we look to the bottom of the screen, we can also see how account numbers are handled when it comes to main accounts or parent accounts and sub-accounts. Payroll liabilities comes under the 24,000 number, but all of the sub-accounts are then variations of that: 24,010, 24,020, and so forth. So now that we have account numbers created, how do we actually create accounts? Well, we can do that by right-clicking and using the shortcut menu, or by coming to the bottom left of the screen and clicking to display the account menu. The very first option at the top is to create a new account. When creating new items in the chart of accounts, the first thing we have to do is designate what type of account it is. The basic types of accounts, income and expenses, are listed first, but then specialized accounts follow. And if you know how to use these, you're welcome to do so. You may also get some advice or help from a bookkeeper or an accountant if that's necessary. We want to create an expense account for training, so we'll click Expense and then click Continue on the bottom right of the window. After the screen flashes for just a little bit, we get to see a form or a window or a screen in which we can create the new account. And if we look carefully, about halfway across the screen, this is where our account number field appears, and it is indeed the one that is waiting for us to put in an entry. We have decided that all of our training is going to be under the number 64,600, so we'll type that in. Next, we need to give our account a name, and that is Training. It is actually a parent account, so sub-account is not appropriate. Normally, I would always recommend that you put in some type of a description, but because you don't need to see me type, we're going to skip that in this particular demonstration. We can also choose to put in a note, and probably one of the most important things is to designate which tax line this should be mapped to. In other words, when it comes time to take all of the information in QuickBooks and assign training expenses to a tax line on our tax forms, which line should that be applied to? This is going to help automate not only the reports in QuickBooks, but also if we use something like TurboTax to help us prepare our tax forms. The options that you see are based on the type of company that was set up with the company file. It's really interesting to scroll through these and become familiar with them, as we may be using them every time we work with different accounts, not to mention different types of income and expenses that we have. Again, if you're not completely familiar with what all of these are, there's a lot of information on the internet, or you can always consult with a bookkeeper or an accountant who can give you some advice. Some of them, of course, make sense, like postage and delivery and office expenses. We're actually going to place this under Other Deductions because it really is professional development, which doesn't fit nicely into any one of the standard Schedule C tax lines. Believe it or not, that's all we have to do to set up a new account in our chart of accounts. But let's go ahead and do one more. So at the bottom center of the screen, we'll click Save and New. Now, if you remember, our training category was account number 64,600. We're now going to create computer training, which is going to be a sub-account of that account, and it's going to be number 64,610. I actually prefer to press my tab key to move quickly as I'm typing, and doing so moves us down to the account name, and we'll now type in computer training. Some people don't like repeating the word training again. That again is personal choice. I like to keep it there so that when we see this name all on its own, it still makes sense and doesn't just say computer. Again, we're going to skip over the description and the note and simply come down and assign our tax line, which, as we know, means we have to scroll down a little bit to get to the bottom of our deductions list. And once we make the selection, we can then simply say Save and Close. If we take a close look, we actually get concerned because our computer training looks like it's a parent account. And indeed it is. We made a mistake when we were first setting it up. But don't worry, we can always go back and modify settings for different items in QuickBooks lists. We simply need to right-click and choose Edit Account. This brings up the exact form that we were working with before, and what we did was very simply overlook checking the sub-account of and designating our training as the parent account. We'll need to scroll down to get to it because they are listed numerically. And once we find training, we can give it a click and then Save and Close. And now we can see the computer training has been correctly entered as a subcategory of general training. So we've actually done two things here. We've added new accounts to our chart of accounts and attributed them appropriately to the right tax lines. That is a key part of using QuickBooks, and especially having end-of-year activities go smoothly and easily. But we also learned that account numbers are available, but are optional. Enabling the feature allows you to either use the account name or the account number whenever we're working in QuickBooks, so it facilitates all of the ways that we think, both for the left-brained and the right-brained people. This makes working with accounts easier and more intuitive, and that's what it's all about.